Okay, we are recording. Sam, how you doing today?
I'm good, thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure, mate. Absolute pleasure. Right, well, look, let's jump straight in. And I always ask guests to kick off the playlist with the song that they regard as having the greatest ever intro.
Well, I mean, I'll probably talk about him quite a lot during the piece, but Billy Joel, I'm a massive fan, and I couldn't not put one of his songs, as one of my choices. So yeah, for me, "Angry Young Man," which he uses as the prelude to um, any of his live gigs, has got this insane piano intro, which, whenever I've seen a Billy Joel tribute, I've always been convinced they've recorded it because it's that insanely quick.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, it always gets the blood pumping whenever the piano intro kicks in.
Where did where did Love of Billy Joel come from?
Good question. I mean, it's a strange one, really. I think because my as we'll probably discover as we run through my choices, my musical tastes are all a bit bonkers. And all a bit sort of there's no real uh, logic to sort of or thread through everything. But with Billy Joel, I think because my roots are like I grew up in the theatre, so I grew up doing musical theatre when I was a kid, like in York, where I'm from. Before I went off to drama school to train to be a proper actor. But so when I was a kid, like young, like some from the age of sort of 10, 11, I was sort of I was doing shows where I was listening to sort of like music from the 40s, 50s, 60s, like some classical musical theatre stuff
Sure.
like Oklahoma, Guys and Dolls, you know, Oliver, My Fair Lady, all these sort of, strange sounds. Um, so, and I was always really impressed, whenever we sort of worked with any of the musicians from the orchestra from these shows, I was always really like captivated and sort of amazed by their sort of skills as musicians. And then as I got older and started listening to all sorts, I started listening to a bit of Billy Joel, then sort of did a bit of digging into his background. And his roots are, he's like, an unbelievable classical pianist,
Yeah.
and I think if he hadn't gone down the route of being a, singer-songwriter, that's what he wanted to do, was be a concert pianist. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I've just always sort of loved that side of his his sort of world. And then that really sort of opened up a door into his songbook, and
Yeah.
sort of, so sort of, so it started as a love of sort of his skills as a musician, really. And then he's used his classical background to like create
Yeah.
this amazing like pop rock stuff,
Yeah.
but there's jazz influences in there, there's blues, there's all sorts mixed in. So so I sort of, it's a strange one, really, but yeah.
It is strange because as somebody, I grew up as I'm nearly 50, so I was catching, the enormity of like Uptown Girl and things like that as a young lad, and just seeing Billy Joel as this sort of commercial pop star, and I think it was in like a music class at school. They made us break down Innocent Man,
Yeah.
and I remember just thinking, oh, there's layers to this guy,
Mm.
and I think I might have got this wrong, but I think that it feels to me that in the UK we just lean towards Elton John. If there's someone on the piano, it's Elton John. And then, but in America, obviously Billy Joel is ridiculously like revered and famous, as he is in the UK, but not. I don't feel he gets as much credit in the UK as he does sort of globally. I say that he's probably just sold out Hyde Park, and so he's probably not too
Yeah.
upset about his level of fame in the UK. But there's so much more to
Yeah.
Billy Joel, and it's doing this podcast over the last few years. has made me realize how many people just go, "Oh yeah, it's all about Billy Joel," and they just. I think once you kind of, because I think for your average casual music listener, you know Billy Joel, oh the guy that sang Uptown Girl, and it's like, oh no, there's loads more. Like
That's it.
scratch the surface, and then you
Yeah.
get a real deep dive. But yeah, I was just curious as to how you how you got there.
Yeah.
Um, okay, well let's stay in the early years, and I'm going to ask you for track 2, please, Sam, and tell me the first song you remember hearing that had an emotional impact on you, please.
Well, again, I don't know if this one's allowed, so I ended up choosing two. Maybe we could use one. Can have maybe an honourable mention,
Of course
maybe.
you can,
But
mate.
yeah, yeah. But I tried to really dig deep here. I tried to sort of think, look, as far back as I could remember. And for me as a kid, I just remember absolutely like pissing myself with excitement when this advert came on telly. You know, there was like, it's the Toys R Us theme tune, but particularly the Christmas advert. They added a few jingles to it for the Christmas. But for me, growing up as a kid, yeah, as soon as that Toys R Us advert came on, literally, you know, it was, yeah, hairs on the back of the neck, sort of, you know, it's nearly here. You know what I mean? Just that sort of,
Is
yeah,
that there's millions of children under one
yeah.
roof? Oh, mate, yeah. It's
Da,
like,
da, da, da,
it's
da, da,
goosebumps.
da,
It's
da.
Christmas. You know what I mean?
Honestly, yeah, that was it. It still does it now. Honestly, I know they don't. They should. Yeah, Toys R Us went bust, I think, but then
Yeah.
they've just recently, last few years, sort of come back around. And yeah, and whenever I hear that advert, honestly, just the yeah, rush of blood. But yeah, so that
Toys R Us was a game changer, though. It was like, because up
yeah,
until then, you just had like either like a little toy bit within a bigger store or
yeah,
your local little toy store. And then all of
that's
a
it.
sudden, Toys R Us, mate, it was a factory full of toys. It was
Honestly,
amazing.
and the advert is so yeah, like close to the actual experience. Like, you know, there's that little kid walking down the aisles, just like absolutely overwhelmed. You know, and I just remember that as a kid. I remember like uh, trying the little electric cars and like, you know, bezzing them around the aisles
Yeah.
and stuff, and you know, all of that. So yeah, as soon as that advert kicks in, so I've got to give an honourable mention to Toys R Us.
Love
Uh,
it.
but then my choice, I had to get a song from a musical in here, right? Because of my roots in musical theatre, I had to. I did Bugsy Malone the musical when it was one of my first ever shows I did when I was about 11 or 12, and I played Fat Sam. And I was a bit of a chubby kid at the time, so it was perfect casting. So yeah, but yeah, one of the songs that really stuck out for me in the show was a song called Tomorrow, which the character Fizzy, he's like the caretaker in Fat Sam's bar. And he just wants a break. He just wants to audition for Sam to be one of the performers in his show at his club. And yeah, he sings this song called Tomorrow, which is about, you know, never getting a break, and you know, my break will come tomorrow, but tomorrow never comes, all that kind of thing. So it was yeah, that for me is, you know, as a kid, I sort of I really sort of resonated with the music. So
That, I
yeah,
mean, that film
yeah,
is
Jodie
off.
Foster, yeah,
Oh my God!
unbelievable,
Like
isn't it?
it's just ridiculous, that film. It's. I was lucky enough about 6 7 years ago. It was the 40th anniversary of it,
Yeah,
and they done a open day thing at was it RADA or something like that. And I took my kids, and there
yeah,
was splurge guns. There was all the original photos and some of the outfits. There wasn't a car. I was really hoping I was going to see a car, but
yeah,
I think the songs in that musical are off the chart. And I'll let you into a secret. My funeral song, like, is "Give a Little Love," and I think what a perfect way to go. You give a little love,
amen.
and it all comes back to you. It's like going to be
Yeah,
remembered for
man.
the things that you say and do. It's
That's
like
it. Yeah,
it's a cracker, and
yeah,
yeah, and that track. But if to reference the film, the Tomorrow track. What's funny is like the young lad that plays Fizzy
mm.
looks about 9, and then when the vocal comes in, it's like Louis Armstrong. It's this
Yeah, yeah.
Such this deep
Just
voice.
like gravelly, like
Yeah.
smokes 60 a day.
You
Yeah,
know.
yeah, it's true. They dubbed loads of voices in that, didn't they? Which was hilarious.
Yeah.
But
Oh, love
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Absolutely love it. So where was growing up?
So I'm from York originally. Yeah. So yeah, yeah. So yeah. Spent all my childhood there. Before then, I moved to London to go to drama school, and then. But yeah, I've eventually gravitated back up north. But yeah,
Fond memories of growing up in York?
yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's a great city to to grow up in. I mean, it's it's yeah, especially like for me as a like as a young kid, sort of getting into theatre and figuring out what I wanted to do. There's so many opportunities in York, to get involved in theatre in some way. But yeah, real fun memories and love going back. It's one of those cities where I don't know if I could ever go back and live because it's only a small little place,
Yeah.
sort of everybody knows everybody. And when you've spent however many years in it in London, it's to go back to a small place like that. Probably not. Don't know if I'd cope, but yeah, it's great to go home to, and yeah, all the family are still there, so it's
And
yeah,
growing up there and sort of finding yourself on stages at a young age.
yeah.
Was you a confident young lad?
Um, it's no, it's that's a funny question. No, it's because you'd have thought so. I mean, put me on a stage and put me behind a character, then yeah, absolutely. But no, I mean, as lots of actors and other creatives, musicians, artists of any kind, I think we hide behind our art in a way, don't we? We hide
Yeah.
behind a lot of it, and we use it to sort of yeah, it's sort of escapism in a way, I guess, isn't it? Yeah, I wouldn't say no. I was a particularly confident kid. I mean, um, you know, I was again. I was quite vocal. I was a bit of a live wire. I was sort of I was always wanted to be the center of attention, but I think that came from like probably like insecurities. I think and sort of fear of not being not being heard or you know what I mean. I think I sort of masked that a lot. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? I think I heard there's a Tony Adams who used to be Arsenal's one of his greatest ever captain, arguably. He always used to say. I remember a quote of his where he said he got his self-esteem from what he did,
Yeah.
not from who he was. He people told him he was one of the best centre halves that's ever worn an Arsenal shirt, and this, that, and the other. But he never believed it himself.
Yeah.
So but he got his self-esteem from everybody around him.
Yeah.
So I think I was a similar kid. I think I still am in many ways.
Yeah.
But you sort of use your art to sort of mask that in a way. I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm.
I'm going to move on because otherwise I'm going to want to talk about how incredible Tony Adams is, and
Yeah.
and that's a
Yeah.
slippery slope for me because
Football. Yeah. Yeah.
that guy's my hero.
Ah,
Um,
legend. Yeah.
okay, right. Track 3. Tell me about the song that reminds you of your time at school, please.
Again, I'm gonna have to have an honourable mention because I'm a bit younger than I look. I look like like Fizzy's voice in Bugsy Malone. I look like a 60-year-old Louis Armstrong and Smoke 60 Day. So when I was at school, like 15, 16, was when the first Arctic Monkeys album dropped,
Yeah.
and it was just like everybody at school went berserk, and it was everywhere. And Dancing Shoes in particular, was a massive. Yeah, it's still a banger. Obviously today, it's instantly fills the dance floor, isn't
Yeah.
it? So it's yeah. So that for me was a quite a distinct memory
Yeah.
of secondary school,
And
especially.
also being
Yeah,
sort of 15, 16,
yeah.
like everything that, because Alex wasn't that much older anyway. And
No,
so the stuff that he was singing about then, lads in tracky bottoms, tucked into socks, hitting people with snooker cues and things like that, it was like,
yeah,
oh, that's the stuff that happens you know, down the youth club. That's the sort. It was all social commentary that I imagine anyone under the age of like 20 was just going, oh my god, this is incredible. Like
That's,
this is what we know. And
yeah,
yeah, absolutely. I don't think there's been a band since
yeah,
in the indie scene that's caused that much interest and has had that much of an impact since. I think they were the
yeah,
last big movement in British indie music.
yeah. I'd have to agree. I think, you know, hearing a band that's talking how you talk and yeah, and singing about things that you know instantly relate to. Yeah, of course. That it's, you know, I've got a few mates from Sheffield as well, and like that, you know, even now, you know, it's just yeah, it's like folklore. You know, it's just they're so ingrained in yeah in that part of my sort of growing up really. So yeah, so
But that's not your choice, right?
it's not no my
Right.
choice again. It's another it's a bit out there. It's another random one, but so it's No More Heroes by the Stranglers, right? So and there is a context to this. So when I was at school, the only band I've ever been in, I'm this frustrated rock star that's still been trying to like desperate to be in a band since. But when I was 12, 13, the first and only band I've ever been in, we set it up. Well, our mate's dad actually set it all up, and like you know, we used to rehearse in his garage and all that. And he sort of picked some songs for us, and this was one of the songs that he chose, and we absolutely loved it. I mean, we played it to death. You know, we did a handful of gigs.
What did you
And
do? Of
so I was front man. I mean,
course you was. Of
yeah,
course
yeah,
you
yeah.
was.
That's it. Yeah, of course. So I was just singing and banging a tambourine, and then my mates who were you know, they had all the skills. You know, we had
Yeah.
my mate Russ was the guitarist. Tim was no, sorry, Russ was yeah bass player. Tim was on guitar. Casper was on drums, and it was his dad who like sort of set the band up. And then my mate Simon was on the keyboard. Yeah, and yeah, some of the other songs we used to sing like Here's to You, Mrs. Robinson. We used to sing yeah, No More Heroes. We used to sing some Beatles stuff. Like it was real mix of stuff. But this particular song really stuck out because we all absolutely loved it. Properly went for it. Like,
Yeah.
you know, proper punk rock, like got stuck in there. So it was yeah, loved it.
Love it. Love it. So where was you playing? Like in around I'm trying to think like from when I used to do gigs and that around York, it was Fibbers, was that still going?
Fibbers, yeah. Gosh,
Uh,
yeah, that's like that was a yeah, the venue that because they used to do Battle of the Bands like
yeah,
every year. Yeah. And I don't think we entered. I think we were a bit too young for Battle of the
yeah,
Bands. But once, you know, as we got through to sort of, you know, later teens, like we spent so much time in Fibbers, like
yeah,
watching our other mates that were in far better bands than we were, you know,
yeah.
like battling it out. And yeah, Fibbers, it's still there. It's still
Is
there.
it?
Still going. Yeah, I think they might have sort of converted it a bit now, and it sort of doubles up as like another venue.
Yeah.
But yeah, great memories in there. It's
Love it. Love
yeah,
it.
great memory.
Um, tell me a little bit about your time at school. Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I did. I mean, you know, despite being a bit being a bit of a self-conscious kid, I did enjoy it. Although I think like as we're discovering with my song choices, like you know, it's such a mix of like styles and taste. It's all a bit confused in a way. And I think as a kid, I was a little bit like that because I didn't really, although I was on the surface, I think I was quite, it looked like I was quite popular. Like, because I used to do loads of, you know, I used to play a lot of sport, you know, obviously I was involved in the theatre side of school, the music side of school. But I sort of used to just like float between these groups of friends. And I never really felt like I never really quite figured out where I fitted in at school, you know. Which then my brother, who's a couple of years older, he really did. Like he had a really tight group of mates that are still friends to this day. Like, you know, he just sort of knew where his place was, if you know
Yeah.
what I mean, in school. And I never did. I sort of floated and just tried to figure it out as I went along. But still, I know I had a great time at school. You know, I have no sort of terrible memories of it and loved it really. Yeah, I was quite lucky. My
Did you know
teachers
what you
made
wanted
it.
to be?
Did I what? Sorry.
Did you know what you wanted to be?
Well, yeah, I mean, from a young age, like young, because I obviously started doing theatre when I was like 11, 12. I either wanted to be a footballer, a cricketer, or Hugh Jackman, basically. That was that
I
was
mean,
like
you've set the bar pretty high there, mate.
that's it. Do you know what I mean? I sort
Like
of
the fact
yeah,
you're like, I'll settle for any of them.
yeah. In any order, to be quite honest. No, I think yeah, sport was like my first love because I started playing that when I was really, really young, and but knew quite quickly that I was half decent, but if you know maybe if I'd have put as much effort into sport as I had into sort of theatre, who knows where it might have gone. But yeah, from quite a young age, I knew I wanted to go into acting in some
Yeah.
capacity. Didn't really know what that sort of landscape looked like, but just sort of carried on doing theatre, and then eventually somebody mentioned drama school, and I was like, oh, what's that? Because so I sort of went down the traditional route. I wasn't. I've got some mates that sort of got into the industry without having to go to drama school, but yeah, didn't have sort of any of those opportunities really. So yeah, I went off to drama school and sort of yeah, did it that way, and yeah, there I am.
Is it? I'm always interested because generally, of all the actors that I've had on this podcast, they've all been from up north, and I'm always intrigued as to that. Do you have to relocate to London to make it? Did it feel like the opportunity was there in York, or did you feel like I've got to go to the city because that's where the streets are paved with gold, and that's where all the industry is. Does it feel like that is still a kind of, well, you've kind of got to do that?
Oh no, I mean, I think there's more opportunities now for actors, well, or younger kids that have no acting experience at all, to walk onto a film set, to walk into an audition, into a meeting. The casting directors are spreading, their net much, much wider. And,
Yeah,
you know, you know, writers, directors like Shane Meadows, who, they don't want, they don't want to pluck somebody out of drama school. He wants real people. He wants raw,
yeah.
lived experience, on his set. So I think there are more opportunities now. I don't think it's for me, I didn't, none of those opportunities sort of crossed my path as a kid. Um, I had some mates that did like National Youth Theatre, so they got to go to London. They got a bit of time off school, and then through National Youth Theatre, a few of them got agents, and then they were managed to get into the industry that way. But my mum was a single parent. We could never afford National Youth Theatre, so it was, I sort of had to go down the traditional route, which I don't regret in any way, because I met a lot of brilliant mates at drama school and met a lot of people, and got into the industry in that sort of in that route. But I think it definitely, the industry has become more accessible. I think over the last 10,
Yeah.
20 years. I think yeah.
Tell me about the first record you remember buying.
Yeah, so this is funny. If my brother listens to this, he'll argue, right, that it was a Westlife album, right? But it wasn't. But it wasn't, right? This just shows you how confused my musical tastes were as a kid. But so like I mentioned, when I was at school, I was just desperate to fit into a group, right? I didn't know which group I fitted in, so I was just like, okay, I'll latch onto this group this week.
Yeah,
So my music mates at school were all listening to like emo music at the time, right?
yeah,
So Linkin Park, My Chemical Romance, Fall Out Boy, all those sorts of
yeah.
big emo bands. So I thought, right, okay, bosh, I'll go and buy some emo music. Wasn't really sure what I was looking for, but anyway, walked into a record shop in York in town and bought a Limp Bizkit album called yeah. So it was yeah, Chocolate Starfish and the Hot Dog Flavored Water
Yeah.
was the first album I remember buying, and I remember putting it on and being like, whoa, whoa, this this is heavy, but and I bought all the clobber as well. I made my mum buy me like the sort of, the Grebo jeans with the chain and the hoodie and all that, so yeah, but didn't last long. That phase didn't last very long.
It's so interesting, isn't it? How you just kind of, how music can also drive them, fashion, and fashion can drive music, and
Yeah.
and how you kind of experiment with them things as a young kid until you kind of, I think it's generally just after school. I think you sort of find your tribe, and I think you then start to kind of go, oh no, this is where I feel comfortable. Do you agree with that at all?
Yeah, no, I do, and like you say, you're constantly discovering yourself as a kid,
Yeah,
aren't you? And finding out who you are, what you like, what you don't
yeah,
like, and yeah, it took me a little bit longer. So, some kids, some of my mates at school, sort of found their place, like I said about my
yeah,
brother as well, a bit sooner. But yeah, it's all part of your discovery. It's all part of your journey, isn't it? And
yeah.
yeah, this emo phase was just a tiny part of mine. It didn't last very long. But
Should have got the Westlife album, mate.
I know I shouldn't. Yeah, yeah, I should have. You're right. Brilliant.
So how old was you when you went to drama school, and did you relocate to? That's what you relocated to London for.
Yeah, yeah. So I went straight from school. So when I was 18, I got in when I was 17, and then I went at 18.
Is that intimidating?
Yeah, I mean it when I think back now, it's been like 15 years since I started drama school, but it's yeah, it was bonkers really. I didn't have a clue. Like I was 18. I was a bit of a mummy's boy. I say a bit,
Yeah,
a lot. Um, yeah, didn't have a clue. Went off to London. There's a student loan coming into my bank account, which was just mental. I had this money coming in, which I was like, woo, just didn't know anything about budgeting or doing a weekly food shop, anything like
yeah,
that. So yeah, it was from a sort of yeah, lifestyle sort of point of view. It was tricky.
yeah,
I don't think I was ready for it. If I think back, I probably could have done with either a year out or a bit more life experience. But
yeah,
it is what it is. That was sort of
yeah,
my journey. And but yeah, there was five of us in my year at drama school that were all 18.
yeah,
And then there was about 28 of us in the year. So the other 22, 23 were all, they'd either done degrees already or
yeah,
they'd had some a year out or whatever. So yeah, so there was a sort of group of us that were all just like cat in the headlights, like what are we doing here?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it was.
Well, I imagine when you get to London and you got your student loan, and you're living with a load of lads. Tell me about clubbing and the song that soundtrack your year's clubbing.
Yeah. Well, again, like I do have like a group of friends that again I sort of I drift to and from that are properly into like house music, techno, like proper music that you'd expect
Yeah,
in a decent club.
yeah,
So I sort of dipped my toe in that area a little bit and can absolutely appreciate, and
yeah,
if I'm with those mates, like bosh, I'm
yeah,
fully invested, I'm fully committed. But it was never really me, if I'm honest. Like so yeah. So again, like even before I went to uni, like because I've always looked older, because since the age of like 14, I've always looked like 45. So like, so so I started going out like quite young, like in York especially.
yeah,
So me and my mates would be out like literally clubbing at like 15, 16. So yeah, and there's this one pub in York where we'd go to for like trebles for singles before we went to the club, and then you also got a pub to club voucher in this pub as well, so you got like a bit of discount
yeah,
at the club as well. So we'd always go into this pub and we'd stick on Shot Through the Heart, Bon Jovi,
yeah,
which would get the blood pumping, it'd get us going, and then we go into the club and like dance away to all sorts, like Pretty Green Eyes, you name it. It was all
yeah,
sorts of like noughties dance music going on, but that Bon Jovi song sort of it sort of
yeah.
yeah, it shapes my years clubbing, not necessarily in the club, but just the build up to, if you know what I mean. So
But the build-up's generally better, isn't it?
yeah, 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 definitely.
Like,
Yeah,
I generally think those moments when you're down the pub with your pals, and you know, you drinking and you're talking about, you know, and it's all to be played for. You don't know where the night's going, but you know, the anticipation is always, I found, better than the actual night. And then generally them kind of natters after the club when you're back at your pals' houses or whatever, like that's better than the actual club. I'm a club promoter. I've been for 30 years. That's my job. I always prefer the bit at the beginning and the bit at the end and the bit in the middle. It's just there to kind of give you a little bit of purpose, I suppose.
That's it. Yeah, the pre-club is for me it's where it's at. Yeah, definitely.
And that track has got a really good intro as well, because it is just right from the off. It just pulls you in, doesn't it? It's just like, here we go.
And for me, it's the middle. It's the sort of the drum solo almost in the middle, you know, where the guitar cuts out, and it's just, you know, it's just the chorus with the drums, and it's just it's epic. Honestly, you've got a triple vodka Vimto down you as well. It's the best thing in the world. The best thing in the world. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Right, well, I'm taking you home. I'm taking you out for track 6. Favorite song from an artist from your home county?
Yeah, this was easy, this one, because Shed 7, obviously being a York-based band, they really did like sort of a lot of my youth was sort of the milestones were there was always a Shed 7 song that hit a milestone through my growing up, really. And my brother is an absolute super fan as well. Like, he goes all over watching them. But so growing up, Shed 7 were always in and around our lives in some way. But Chasing Rainbows is like obviously their anthem, you know, and for us as kids, even, you know, because they were like massive in the 90s when I was a little bit too young to be a super fan. But then in my teens, you know, through the noughties, when obviously they had a big gap, didn't they, before they came back, and but still they have this massive cult following up north, especially, you know, and it's an absolute tune.
They're a cracking band. When I said a few years back now, I had Rick on the podcast, and it was you know, getting the chat to him, and I mean, if as soon as you, for me, I have to think of music in York, Shed 7. It's all about Shed 7. But I really like how they done it. I like the fact that they were huge, obviously, in the 90s, and then so many bands then just kind of split up and do solo things and do other bits and bobs, and then start doing nostalgia circuits, and then kind of it sort of fizzles out a little bit. But they just kind of sort of sat it out for a bit and came back, and they're having probably, you know, as much success as they've always had now. Like when they announced tours, bang, they're sold out straight away, and it's like they're still absolutely, and live Shed 7 deliver.
100%. And it's funny, it's like obviously Shed Sember is you know, is massive, you know, every year is just sold out. And but Rick, I mean, it's funny, he's, you know, obviously, you know, he's a little bit older than he was when they first started out, but his voice, like, it always amazes me how pure, like, from, like, you know, singing like pretty, you know, the indie sound that they make, like, it's all really high up in his register. But even now, even in their like renaissance, like, his voice is still just as pure as it was like back in the 90s. Like, it's
absolutely,
he's got a brilliant sound to it. But they Shed 7 will always be like, they'll always be up there.
And they've got great pop sensibilities. All of their songs have got such good choruses and like really good hooks and stuff like that. They're obviously smashing songwriters, because you know, as much as they were a super cool indie band in the 90s, you listen back and you think the choruses and like the hooks in these verses and stuff is so infectious. It's just really solid pop songwriting.
It is proper textbook. It's great. In fact, so much so that me and my brother, we went to Vegas in just after I left uni, and we were, you know, we had a good we had a good night on the roulette tables. So we were walking down the strip a little bit worse for wear, and we both decided to get a tattoo. And I stumbled in, didn't know what I wanted, just like picked this random image out of a catalogue, basically. He was just like, I'll have that. And then, but my brother was too drunk to get a tattoo, so I made him go back the morning after I made him go back the morning after, and he got some Shed 7 lyrics tattooed on his arm. He got, in fact, he got out. I think he got Chasing Rainbows, I think, on his arm. So yeah, he's been printed with the Shed 7 stamp for years now, which is
Oh, that's amazing.
Absolutely, yeah. He's a mega fan.
Okay, last track. This is when you get to be a tastemaker, and I'm going to ask you to tell me a song that you think many of the listeners to this podcast may not know that you would like them to hear.
Well, again, I found this one quite tricky because I'm not by any means like a music guru that's listening to like really obscure B-sides or anything like that. So a lot of your listeners may already listen to Richard Hawley stuff, but any that don't, you need to, because he's just for me he's like the Johnny Cash of Yorkshire. Like he's just he's unbelievable. So yeah, the track I've chosen is Just Like the Rain by Richard Hawley from Cole's Corner album, and this song in particular, like certainly when I was in London, like going through uni, drama school, and beyond, we'd always stick this on, like usually after a night out, just when you sort of, just sort of chilling out, and it's got an unbelievable like tone to his voice, and
so cinematic, isn't it?
absolutely, he's
he's an absolute genius, absolute genius.
Yeah.
And I think it's as we touched on with the Arctic Monkeys, I think the social commentary that Richard Hawley, the way that he writes, talking about such work, it's such a working class kind of sort of picture, but he paints it with such magic and that sort of cinematic shine, and it just makes it sound like the most glorious thing you can. He's just he's something that the UK music scene should be super proud of. I think he's
Absolutely.
he's a real maverick, and just such a interesting guy. I was listening to him on a podcast. I was talking to Gary Kemp on the Rock and Turns podcast, and the amount of stuff that he's done and the people that he's worked with, like obviously being in Polk and the Long Pigs, and and then you didn't realise, like, I had no idea he was like one of the sort of most sought after session guitarists, and he's played with literally everyone, and it's like he was just sort of chatting about it, and it was like, oh my God. And just have you seen his musical yet?
No, I was just going to mention that actually, like, because I'm really excited about it, because obviously it was developed at the Sheffield Crucible Theatre, and it's gone to obviously the National in London. But from all the reviews I've seen, it's absolute smash hit. So I mean, that's what I mean. He's one of those where he can sort of turn his hand to, a bit like Billy Joel in a way. Like his roots are, he's an unbelievable musician, like first and foremost, and then he's able to use that foundation, to sort of, to turn his hand to all different styles, and obviously now he's writing music for for a theatre show, and he's a legend, absolute legend.
He scored a film as well, didn't he? I don't know if you ever saw the film Funny Cat, a Maxine Peake film.
You know what, I haven't, but I didn't know he's also he has written for film, but I've not seen it.
It's an incredible film, and a beautiful score, and there's no end to that guy's talents.
Definitely.
Well, let's talk about your talents, Sam. What's coming up? What's happening with you now?
Well, I've got a show on the BBC at the minute, which is it's also available on iPlayer if you want to binge it. It's called Better. It's a new crime thriller, which it's like a redemption story. It follows a corrupt police officer who's trying to make amends for her past, and I play her husband in it, and who's also in on her double life. So he's sort of he's a part of this corrupt world. So that's on it's on BBC One at the minute. It's airing every every Monday. But if you want to binge it, you can do that on iPlayer as well. Yeah, and then we're not quite sure of an air date yet, but to come is another BBC series. This is a period drama. This one though, it's a new Shane Meadows series called The Gallows Pole.
Oh, you're in there.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, amazing.
So yeah, so that's to come. But yeah, it's based on a true story about a crime family in Yorkshire in the 1700s. So yeah, so it's exciting. So that's to come.
How does that? I mean, I'm just talking as a fan, but how does that, as an actor, when you get the gig and you know that it's a Shane Meadows thing, is that was Shane's work something that you'd always looked at as obviously being a northern filmmaker and working with such amazing talent. All of them actors that I said that I'd on this podcast is Joe Hartley's and Thomas Turgouse's and all the people from Shane's stuff, and hearing about how they kind of ended up working with him. Like, how exciting was it for you to get a Shane Meadows gig?
Oh, I mean, yeah, it was a no-brainer when I got the call that he wanted to have a chat. I was like, yeah, yes, okay. I remember it was actually like COVID was still sort of really yeah. I can't remember if we'd finished with the lockdowns, but it was still like rife, and I'd not worked for a little bit, and I was sort of just a bit of a loose end, and then this opportunity came up, and yeah, I mean, I grew up obviously watching This Is England, and The Virtues, and Dead Man's Shoes, and all these unbelievable stories about working class people, and but I was always a bit worried that, like, I knew that Shane works usually with actors that hadn't trained, but that hadn't been to drama school, but they were raw, that they were and I thought, maybe he sees that I've been to drama school, he won't want to, he might not want to work with me, but that wasn't the case at all. Like, we just all got thrown in together, and yeah, it was an unbelievable experience. I mean, he works in such a different way to any other writer director that I've worked with before, and just creates this big family, and yeah, it was a great gig, and yeah, met a lot of great people on it as well.
Wonderful. Oh, I can't wait to see it.
Yeah.
And if people want to keep up to speed with you and everything that's going on, where's the best place to follow you and keep up to speed? You on the socials?
Yeah, I'm on the socials. Yeah, yeah, Twitter, Instagram. Yeah, yeah. If you want to, yeah, have a look, and yeah, I'm just really just share stupid memes about Donald Trump and cats, really. But you feel free if you want to follow me. I mean, it's
Well, if it's cool with you, we'll tag you in the post when this episode comes out, so those that aren't following you can do so.
yeah.
Sam, it's been a proper joy. Thanks loads for coming on, mate, and talking records. Really appreciate it.
Cheers, Stu. Thanks for having me. Thank you.
I'm going to press stop. Don't go anywhere.